Hello, it's Randi Rhodes. Here's a clip from our show, and go to randyrhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.
Mary had a little lamb.
The fall. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
I'm Miles Taylor. I served as the Chief of Staff of the Department of Homeland Security under the Donald Trump administration. I would go into the office, I would read my intelligence brief, and then it was my job to help the Department of Homeland Security to keep our country safe. What we saw week in and week out, and for me after 2.5 years in that administration, was terrifying. We would go in to try to talk to him about a pressing national security issue, cyber attack, terrorism threat. He wasn't interested in those things. To him, they weren't priorities. The president wanted to exploit the Department of Homeland Security for his own political purposes and to fuel his own agenda. The California wildfires. On a phone call with the Federal Emergency Management Agency, he told FEMA to cut off the money and to no longer give individual assistance to California. He told us to stop giving money to people whose houses had burned down from a wildfire because he was so rageful that people in the state of California didn't support him and that politically it wasn't a base for him. The policies at the border, he wanted to restart zero tolerance and separate families. He said he wanted to go further and have a deliberate policy of ripping children away from their parents to show those parents that they shouldn't come to the border in the first place. A lot of the time, the things he wanted to do not only were impossible, but in many cases illegal. He didn't want us to tell him it was illegal anymore because he knew that there were, and these were his words, he knew that he had magical authorities. He was one of the most unfocused and undisciplined senior executives I've ever encountered. I came away completely convinced based on firsthand experience that the president was ill-equipped and wouldn't become equipped to do his job effectively. And what's worse, was actively doing damage to our security. People who are still serving in this administration have said to me, just wait until the second term. It'll be no holds barred. It'll be shock and awe. We'll do what we want. Given what I've experienced in the administration, I have to support Joe Biden for president. And even though I'm not a Democrat, even though I disagree on key issues, I'm confident that Joe Biden will protect the country. And I'm confident he won't make the same mistakes as this president.
Wow. So I'm bringing up the Department of Homeland Security specifically because Miles Taylor, who was the chief of staff at the Department of Homeland Security, is telling us today that Donald Trump turned the Department of Homeland Security into his own personal police state, okay? And that is why you have Republicans who would work for a woman like Kirstjen Nielsen and allow this family separation policy to be implemented and not say anything while it's being implemented, have had quite enough now that the Department of Homeland Security is on its fifth secretary, and Ken Cuccinelli is the deputy, okay? And we saw Donald Trump take the Department of Homeland Security and not only turn it into a family separation unit of the Stasi or of the SS. I mean, it was creepy watching the Sophie's Choice that, mothers were having to make. But now using those Border Patrol officers, those tactical units in riot gear, unmarked, being unleashed on peaceful protesters at Lafayette Square, and then in Portland, so that he could send a message. I will send my military, my assets into cities that I don't like. Even if mayors and governors object, even over their objection, I have magical powers. I am the president of the United States. And if I want to turn this into a police state, I'm going to turn this into a police state. People who have looked at what's happening at the Department of Homeland Security and his use of it as his own personal secret police, his own personal stormtroopers, his own personal militia, are sickened by it. I can give you some of the quotes here. I mean, the deployment of federal agents represents the most tangible manifestation of Donald Trump's turning this place into a police state. But some of the quotes, I mean, a lot of the people are not putting their name to it. But some of the people who study federal governments and autocratic movements said that that what Trump is doing is shocking. Sending those assets into cities over the objections of their mayors does resemble the early days of a police state, I'm sorry to say. And then we have this GAO report. I haven't heard anybody report on it. I need to push the story out to the mainstream, to the commercial, the cables. They need to have this story, okay? This story is a story of a report that was just issued by the Government Accountability Office. And it finds that the DHS officials that are serving Donald Trump now are ineligible for their positions. I'm just going to read you what's in the Hill. It says the appointments of two top Department of Homeland Security officials, including the acting secretary, that's Chad, violated federal law, according to the Government Accountability Office, GAO, a report that came out on Friday. The GAO found that acting secretary and acting deputy secretary Ken Cuccinelli are technically ineligible to serve based on their improper appointment. The issue with the two officials' appointments stems from when former Homeland Security Secretary Christian Nielsen resigned in April 2019 and was replaced by Kevin McAleenan, who had previously been leading Customs and Border Patrol. McAleenan had not been designated in the order of succession to replace Kirstjen Nielsen, the GAO found, and therefore could not legally alter the order of succession at the Department of Homeland Security. This is a quote from the report. Quote, accordingly, Misters Wolf and Cuccinelli were named to their respective positions of acting secretary and senior official performing the duties of deputy secretary by reference to an invalid order of succession, the GAO report states. They didn't weigh in on the consequences of their actions, meaning calling out the Border Patrol tactical units in Portland or the gassing of, peaceful protesters in Lafayette Square. That's going to be a whole separate investigation. But this is a damning opinion. This is a disturbing picture of the Trump administration violating federal law. They're doing it with the post office, too. Bypassing all Senate confirmations. I mean, this is just so sick. So Benny Thompson, who's speaking tonight, hopefully this will be somewhere in his speech, and Carolyn Maloney, who is also bringing the complaints against the post office, because these are the Government Oversight Committee ranking member and chairwoman. It's the House Committee on Homeland Security and Oversight and Reform. They have called for Chad Wolf to step down, and for Ken Cuccinelli to resign. And they said, at a time when DHS should be marshaling the resources of the federal government to respond to a pandemic that's killed 170,000 Americans, the department's illegally appointed leaders are instead focusing on continuing the administration's attack on immigrants and intimidating peaceful protesters in a show of force for the president's re-election campaign. Now, I want you to know he goes through DHS acting secretaries like toilet paper. Well, Chad is number 5. And he's not Senate confirmed, and we haven't had anybody Senate confirmed since Christian Nielsen resigned 16 months ago. Also, a federal judge in March has ruled that Ken Cuccinelli has been illegally serving in his post because there's an order of succession that needs to be followed, and they didn't. Go to RandiRhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.